Hey yo! Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another live stream. Welcome back to another episode. The price of Bitcoin has appreciated about $10,000, potentially $11,000 in the last 24 hours. I was just on Twitter scrolling down, and you can't believe what I'm seeing. You can't believe what I'm seeing around here, guys. You absolutely cannot believe what I'm seeing around here. I should have took some screenshots, but anyways, doesn't even matter. BTC is up over $10,000 in the last 24 hours. And the question everyone is asking, was that the bottom of the bear market? Is this the beginning of new all-time highs? Was that the bottom of the bear market, and is this the beginning of a new all-time high? And of course, you probably know exactly what I'm thinking. You probably know exactly what I'm going to say to you. If you watched my stream yesterday when the price of Bitcoin was look, yesterday we were melting down. When BTC was melting down, when we were literally about to lose $60,000, when we were crashing from $70,000, when we saw the lowest RSI in the history of Bitcoin, when we were extremely oversold. I told you guys, do not dollar cost average into this market. So you wake up about 8, 12 hours later, you see the price of Bitcoin in the $70,000 range. And you are probably wondering, I should have dollar cost average. I should have bought Bitcoin yesterday. I shouldn't have listened to you. I should have trust my intuition. I should have just bought Bitcoin. Now I missed the bottom. Now Bitcoin is going back to $100,000. Now Bitcoin is going to $150,000, $200,000. But I had the chance to buy at $60,000. Yo, chat, we going below 60,000. We are going below $60,000. It may not be right now, and I'm gonna talk about why. It may not be right now, but we're going below $60,000. You are going to have the opportunity. You that's watching this live stream, you that's on the sideline, you're going to have the opportunity to buy Bitcoin in the low $50,000 range and potentially below $50,000. And we're going to talk about that. Trust me. Trust me. This is not the low of the bear market. This is not the beginning of going back to new all-time highs. It could be. All right. It could be because there's no certainty in my analysis, and this is a game of probabilities. But you got to get away from the short time. You got to get away from the short term. You got to zoom out. You got to look at the bigger pictures. So, what I wanted to do today, I wanted to talk about Bitcoin. I wanted to talk about what you are seeing right now, in terms of price action. I wanted to give you guys, some updates on the altcoin market because some altcoins are absolutely on fire. Zcash is currently up about 24%. It's gone up around $40, I believe, almost $50. ZBCN is up 36%. You got Sui that's up 16%. You got Jasmine up 20%. The altcoins are up massive, in the last 24 hours. So what I wanted to do is, I wanted to live stream today the same way I live streamed yesterday when the market was melting. I wanted to make sure I do a live stream when the market is pumping today. If this is your first time right here, guys, I am going to ask you to, consider subscribing. Hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button. And yeah, let's talk about this market. Let's talk about what you see right now and why I don't believe this is the time to dollar cost average into Bitcoin on any of these altcoins. So, I don't know if I have to say this again, but maybe it's worth repeating. Nothing goes down in a straight line. Nothing, not Bitcoin, not the stock market, not any other assets goes down in a straight line. There is going to be bounces. What you see right now, guys, is a bounce because, you look at yesterday's price action. We were extremely, extremely oversold. You have to remember, price of Bitcoin dropped from around $73,000 down to 60,000 in a matter of hours. That was yesterday's price action. And when we live streamed yesterday and we looked at the daily RSI, I told you guys this was the lowest, at least one of the lowest daily RSI in the history of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was extremely, extremely oversold. Daily RSI was around 15. So it is no surprise the buyers were willing to step in because of how extremely oversold we were. And it's not a surprise that we have this type of price action. Bitcoin is not a stranger to, pulling moves like this. Volatility is the name of this game. Volatility is the nickname of Bitcoin. So to see Bitcoin go from $60,000 to 71,000, this is not out of the norm if you're not new to this market. In the past, we've seen Bitcoin do some crazy moves. We've seen Bitcoin go up 20, 30% in a matter of hours. So this is not shocking. This is not a surprise if you are someone, who's been around this market for some time. The question that you should be asking is not, was this the bottom of the bear market? The question that you should be asking is, have we reversed this downtrend? Because if you think the price of Bitcoin is going up long term, or even in the short term, the trend is got to be up. Price is meaningless. Even if the price of Bitcoin was to go from $50,000 to this $71,000, it wouldn't mean anything if the trend is down. So I want to break it down to you guys. I want to share with you some major, major key levels that Bitcoin is going to have to break, in order to start trending up long term, in order for the price to start appreciating on a daily basis, on a weekly basis moving forward. Because right now, the trend is down. And as long as the trend is down, the price of Bitcoin will continue, right? Will continue to go down. So let's talk about that, guys. So a very nice move right here. If you look at the 4-hour time frame, and actually, we can even go all the way back to the 1 hour. We can talk about, what you see right here. But let me go to the weekly. Chat, what you have right here is one of the most important weekly candle in the history of this market. Bitcoin lost $74,000, which is a major, major support. And you're looking at a Bitcoin that could potentially, right? You're looking at a Bitcoin that could potentially close this week below $74,000. And I'm going to be very honest with you. If we close below $74,000, this move right here, right, this move that you have right here from $60,000 back to $70,000, all right, this move, other than, price going from $60,000 to $70,000, this move is meaningless. Unless you short-term trade it and your entry was perfectly at $60,000 and you take profits at $70,000, all right, this doesn't mean anything. If Bitcoin is going to try to accomplish something, it's got to get back above $74,000 by the end of this week, before we close the week. Bitcoin is going to have to close above $74,000. If we can close above $74,000, all right, there's an opportunity for us to explore the potential. All right, look, this is only potential, guys. It doesn't even guarantee, but there's a likelihood that maybe the short-term bottom is in, and we could potentially push back into the $80,000 range. But that is only if Bitcoin managed to close above $74,000. Right, so I wanted to make sure I get that out there so you guys know exactly what you're dealing with. Price going from $60,000 to $70,000. It doesn't really. It's meaningless. There is no accomplishment in this. Right? You want to try to accomplish something, you need to close the week above $74,000. Because once we close below 74,000, that is a confirmation that we're going lower. All right. The price of Bitcoin around here doesn't mean anything. It means something as long as we close below $74,000. So BTC being at 60,000, it doesn't really mean anything until we get the weekly close below $74,000. That means something. So if the bulls want to see something that's bullish, sustainably moving forward, all right, the bare minimum is closing above $74,000 by the end of this week. So I wanted to make sure you guys, get that part. When you go to the daily, all right, the daily has already, look, to me, the daily is already over. The damage is already done. We had a daily close below $74,000, and that is why, you ended up with this move down into the $60,000 range. So if I'm looking at Bitcoin right now on the daily, all right, on the daily, guys, for Bitcoin to break some daily structures, it's got to have to rally all the way back above $90,000. I don't think Bitcoin is going back above $90,000 anytime soon, right? So when you see BTC go from 60,000 to 70,000, this is nothing. All right, there is no accomplishment in this because when you look at the structure of this daily, what we have is lower highs and lower lows. Right, what we have is lower highs and lower lows, and what you want to see is Bitcoin breaking above the last lower high, which is $90,000. We need to break above the last lower high. And right now, the last lower high is $90,000. So in order for Bitcoin to accomplish a reversal in this downtrend, $90,000 is the key level that we need to break on the daily. Right? Unless we get another lower high, somewhere around $70,000, unless Bitcoin goes up and then we put in another lower high and then we get a pullback, then instead of looking at 90,000, then we will have to shift to, whatever the new lower high is. But as of right now, we got some work to do. We got a lot of work to do. And this is why I'm not convinced that, there's anything to take out of today's price action. Like, I'm really, really not convinced. This is a day cap bounce, guys. Nothing goes down in a straight line. You look at the Bitcoin, you look at this drop right here. It is basically going from $97,000 to $60,000. So to go from $97,000 to $60,000, you should always expect that there's probably going to be some sort of a bounce. And this is the bounce that you see today. All right, let's go down to the lower time. What about the lower time such as, the 1 hours? So if I'm on the lower time right here, this is not major, but the first key level of Bitcoin is coming up against. I'm looking at 71,000. Let's just call it $72,000. We're just going to round it up. But it's basically $71,900. All right, that is your first major level that we need to overcome. And also, guys, I need to see some lower highs. And right now, I need to see some higher lows. I don't know if we want to call these higher lows right here. Look, if you think these are higher lows, I'm perfectly fine with them. But I need to see a clear one. Like, I need to see a pullback that looks like this. I need to see a higher low. So meaning, to me, price is got to stay above $60,000. I need to see something like that. If we can get something like that, then I would like to see the price of Bitcoin break above $71,000, and then I would like to see every pullback continue to put in higher lows. On the 1 hour, this is exactly what I would like to see. And so far, we don't have anything like this. All right. When you look at RSI on the 1 hour, we are already reaching oversold. All right. Bitcoin is already approaching oversold. Let me be very honest and straightforward with you guys. In a bull market, oversold is an indication to get out of the market. So if your entry was somewhere in the, let's just say you got in around $63,000, it makes sense to start taking profits right here, because most likely this move is coming to an end and we are going to get hit with a pullback. So if I'm looking at this 1 hour though, like where would I like to see Bitcoin? Where would I like to see Bitcoin trade? Before I feel some sort of, start having some confidence that maybe, we may go back into the mid 80s and potentially into the 90s. Well, chat, the major resistance comes in around basically $79,000. I think Bitcoin is going to have a hard time getting above $79,000. If this is going to continue, I think we are going to have a hard time getting above $79,000. This is a major, major resistance for Bitcoin. All right. Personally, I don't see a rally back into the mid $80,000 range. I definitely don't see a rally back into the $90,000 range. I think we might spend some time in this, $70,000 and $60,000 range. We might just go on for, probably a couple weeks. We'll see how this plays out. And then, all right, once the consolidation or once the rally is over, my expectation is that, we're going to take out $60,000 and we're going all the way down into the low $50,000 range. And I'm going to explain to you guys why, this is my outlook on BTC. Remember, I could be wrong, but I honestly believe we're going below $60,000. You are going to see the price of Bitcoin in the low $50,000 range. You just got to be a little bit more patient. So if I'm looking at this, look, in my opinion, I don't think you get a weekly rally back into like the $80,000 range. Basically, I don't think you get something like this where price goes back into the $80,000 range. I think what you might get though is where the market goes, probably sideways between this entire range. Basically, if you think about this box right here, I think this is the top. We probably stay here for probably a couple weeks. BTC goes up there, and then we come back all the way down. Maybe we go up again, and then we come back again. Then we come back again, and then we might drop all the way down into this $50,000, potentially into the 40s. Like I don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but I see a scenario that looks like this, and this is going to be the bottom of the bear market. Now, this is going to take time. So, if this is what Bitcoin is going to do, all right, and if this takes place like right here, if this does not take place, somewhere in the low $50,000 range, if I can move this like this, if this doesn't take place somewhere in the $50,000 range, then I think, what point was I trying to make? Anyways, look, if this takes place right here, all right, if this takes place somewhere around here. Oh, I know exactly what I was about to say. So this is going to take a couple months to play out. You could potentially go sideways for about, I'm going to say for about 2 months. All right, we go sideways for about 2 months, and then we capitulate again. We get a drop into, once again, the $50,000, potentially into the higher 40s. All right, could we go all the way down to like 39? Look, probably. I don't want to predict BTC in the $30,000 range, but what I'm doing right here is I'm trying to paint a picture of what this could potentially look like, and why or how we could potentially end up below $60,000. You have to be a little bit more patient. In my opinion, I actually think, like some of you guys probably don't see this, but I actually think we got at least 3 more weeks of exactly this type of price action. I think this is going to be a bearish weekly close, and I think the following week we potentially go lower again, and the week after, and then we might go just sideways. All right, we might go sideways for 2 3 months, and then you get the last drop, and then we start building the base. All right, we start building the base. This will be the process for the next bull market. The reason I don't believe that this is the end of the current bear market, and the reason I don't believe that this is the low of the bear market, is because I don't believe we are going to have a V-shaped recovery. So a V-shaped recovery will look like this, where price just goes all the way up to retest these major resistance levels, and then you get a pullback, and then we continue back into the $100,000 range, and eventually $100,000. An example of a V-shaped recovery, guys, will look exactly like the COVID drop. So I don't think we're getting the COVID drop, V-shaped recovery. So you see how we had this massive collapse, and then Bitcoin rose from $3,000, like literally in a straight line, all the way back to 90,000. We had a pullback, and then this was the beginning of a new all-time high. So I don't think we get something like that. I do think, this is a different type of setup. We don't have a black swan. It's not like yesterday was, a black swan or some type of event that caused the price to drop like this. I think this was very organic. This entire price action has been very organic. It's not even like this is 1010, guys. If you think about 1010, the cryptocurrency market was 100% destroyed, especially the altcoin market. But if you look at this entire bear market so far, like this is very organic. This is normal bearish bear market price action. So I don't think we get a V-shaped recovery. If we do get a V-shaped recovery, I'll be very, very shocked. And, I'll be looking to jump back into the market somewhere around the $90,000 range. Yo, chat, I'm perfectly fine if this is the bottom and I don't jump in right here and I end up buying around 90,000. What I don't want to do is I don't want to jump into a market that is in a clear long-term downtrend that could potentially go all the way down into the $50,000 range. I don't believe in dollar cost averaging into a long-term downtrend market. Nothing good comes out of it. A good example is, just think about if you would have dollar cost average into MicroStrategy. All right, the stock looks, just take a look at the state of the stock, guys. The stock goes from $500, dropped all the way down to $100. If you would have dollar cost average, let's say when the price went from $550 to $400, you would have started dollar cost averaging. Yo, if you DCA into Sailor Coin from the even the $300 range, you look crazy right now, because you look at this price action and you wish you would have just stayed on the sideline, this entire time, because you could have got so much better entries. You could have got so much better entries. And this is exactly what I see with Bitcoin. I don't see a reason to dollar cost average. I need a reason to dollar cost average. And to me, the reason needs to be TA wise, we're going sideways. We are breaking these long-term structures. And we have a market that is more likely to start trending up long-term. Right now, that's not what we have, guys. The price of Bitcoin is well below its 200 daily moving average. We are also about to lose the 200 weekly moving average. When you go to the lower time, even though price is up, like we haven't done anything as far as breaking the structures of this downtrend. Even if you simply just put a trend line right here, guys, even if you just go like this, if you take the highs of this move and you connect it to every single one of these tops, like we are already coming up against a massive, resistance, this trend line right here. So this is a place where I think Bitcoin is going to face some challenges, and we could potentially just get rejected and come all the way down here. Now, if you want to do something, I think you are going to have to keep an eye on Bitcoin and see how it trades, somewhere around $62,000. If we start to see something like this, probably that is a local bottom, and maybe we go up again. So you can look for some entries, short-term trades, of course. You can look for some entries somewhere around here, and then you look to take profits anywhere around $70,000. Once again, welcome back to the channel. Hopefully you guys are having an amazing Friday. It's a beautiful day today. Chat, smash the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. But hit the like button, guys. Thoughts on XMO, CVX, overbought on the weekly? Would you weigh on bearish divergence on the weekly time frame or exit? Let's take a look at that. It's a fantastic question. So, what do we have? Let me see. Looking for X or M. I'm gonna jump into the altcoin market very soon, guys. Let me just analyze these tickers right here. X or M right here. All right, so I'm looking at this one. Let's start from the bigger time frames. Right here, this is the monthly right here. So to me, this one looks really good. I know the monthly is like, a little bit higher, but this is a clear uptrend. RSI is overbought, but to me, overbought RSI in the bull market is always a sign of strength. So I'm looking at this from a sign of strength perspective, instead of just looking at it from a weakness. And I actually think this thing could continue higher. So let me kind of make my argument. It consolidate for about, you go from 2022, we in 2026 right now. So this is ExxonMobil, right? So ExxonMobil consolidates for about 4 years, and then it finally gets a breakout. 4 years of a consolidation, and you get a breakout, the move wouldn't be just for 2 months. I think this thing goes way, way higher. Now, potential price targets based on this consolidation, of course, you basically get the length of the consolidation. So that would be from the low right here all the way up to the top. So if you take this and you put it right here, so it should give us a target of $156. We are almost there. I don't think ExxonMobil is going to stop at 156. And the reason is because the bigger the range, all right, there's a saying when it comes to trading, the bigger the range, the bigger the pump. I think the bigger the move. I think that's what the saying is, right? Yeah, in trading, exactly, guys. The longer the base, it's the base. So the longer the base, the bigger the breakout. So think about this, right? It goes sideways for 4 years. It finally gets a breakout. This is not a weakness, all right? RSI overbought is not a weakness. This is a strength because RSI can stay overbought for a very, very long period of time. In my opinion, I wouldn't do anything with this position. And actually, instead of thinking about trimming it, I would add on to my position because this looks really, really good. Is there going to be some pullbacks along the way? Of course, there's going to be some pullbacks. There's always pullbacks. A good time to jump in definitely would have been around, at least on the daily, would have been around $114. But on the monthly or on the weekly, this was the right time to jump in, at $130. So if this was your entry, exiting right here doesn't make any sense. But if you do take profits, it's never a bad time to take profits. Profits are profits, but I think it goes way, way higher. Minimum target right now should be 156. But I think it goes way higher than $156, especially, just looking at the setup of this monthly. Yeah, I like this. This looks really, really good. Let's take a look at CVX. CVX, yeah, all these stuff, they're doing well. So CVX, I'm very bullish on this one. Again, pulls back for about 4 years. you finally get the breakout. Trust me, this is not a time to be bearish. Look, these are not extremely volatile stocks, so I'm not expecting CVX and ExxonMobil to move like Bitcoin when BTC is in the bull market, or to move like Palantir, or to move like Nvidia. I'm not expecting that type of price action. But what I am expecting is price to, steady go up. I'm expecting for CVX, all right, this is Chevron Corporation. I'm expecting it to break $190, which is, I believe, its all-time highs. And I'm expecting price to continue to go up. This is actually a time to be a buyer. Like on the monthly, if you're jumping in right now, it's definitely early in the move. You look at indicators such as your MACD looks really good. RSI looks really, really good. This RSI could potentially push all the way up into the overbought territory, just like it did back in, January of 2022 until May of 2022. So yeah, expecting price to continue to go up. Absolutely bullish on these two. Yeah, overbought. You want to look at it as a sign of strength instead of a sign of weakness. And even if speaking of momentum, if you look at the momentum indicator on the weekly, yeah, you don't want to take profits right now, man. You actually want to add on weakness. So every time there's a pullback, you want to add on to your position. And speaking of RSI as a sign of strength, can you imagine if you would have took profits because your daily RSI was overbought? That was around $160. All right. It is currently at $180. So the expectation should be that we are most likely to continue in overbought territory for a very long period of time, because you have more buyers stepping in. There's no way you look at this monthly setup and now want to be bullish on this stock. Like, this looks really, really good. Yeah, and speaking of, divergencies, like I don't see bearish divergency right here. If I'm looking at this RSI, even the MACD, I don't see bearish divergency. Even on Exxon Mobil, I don't see bearish divergency on the weekly. I don't see bearish divergency on the monthly. All right, yeah, this looks really, really good. Bearish divergencies was right here, but price just kind of went sideways. All right, let's get back to crypto. So, yeah, big movers in altcoins. I do have an MSTR position. I'm gonna take my I don't know if I'm gonna get profits or if I'm gonna break even. I have a position MSTR. My interest from 172. So, if price comes anywhere in the $170 range, I am out of this position because, yeah, this thing, man, I'm gonna wait and probably jump in somewhere below $100, or at least I'm gonna wait until the uptrend is developed. Yeah, I don't want to hold on to something that could potentially go sideways for another couple months. I don't want to take the L right now, so I don't want to lose money on the stock, but yeah, I'm going to take my profits. But what I will say, though, is I'm going to say this, though. This weekly close in the stock market, this is very positive. So if buyers, are willing to step in and push price back up, to me, a weekly candle like this, what it tells me is over the next couple of weeks, we are more likely to see positive price action. So this right here, guys, this wick right here, if we end today in the 130, even in the $120 range, this is really, really positive. So I actually like what I'm seeing right here. And I think, we could potentially push all the way back to $180, maybe around $200. But I don't think we go back to like $230. If we go to $230, I'll be very shocked, to be honest. Let's talk about altcoins. I'm going to start with Ethereum. All right, so altcoins, where are we right now? Am I still expecting, Ethereum to come all the way down into this 13, $1,500 range and potentially into this $900, $1,000 range? I'm gonna say absolutely yes, guys. The only way I would change my opinion, I would have to see a reason to change that opinion. So if I can go down to the lower time, if I see Ethereum start to break some structures, then that would trigger me to change my outlook on Ethereum. But if I'm on this 1 hour right here, to me, I'm not really phased on the current price action. This doesn't really change anything. If you put a trend line right here, we are currently still in a beautiful downtrend, lower lows, lower highs. So the bare minimum, at least in the short term, guys, Ethereum needs to get above $2,200. Like if a conversation is going to be had that the low of the pullback or the bear market is in, get above $2,200, give us some pullbacks, put in some higher lows. I'll give you guys an example of this using the last bigger drop. If you go back to the last time Ethereum came all the way down into this like $1,500 range, which was not so far back. So here, right here, guys, right here, let me show you where you could have kind of started to developing a bullish thesis. So right here, guys, look, you get a drop right here. Price of Ethereum goes up. We had another drop right here, a lower low, but still went back up. And then we had another drop right here, another higher low. So once you got these three drops right here, where price, clearly tried to break down, but never really happened. This was a time, especially around $1,500. The low is $1,300, price around $1,500. This was a time to say, I am willing to take a shot that the bottom of Ethereum is right now in. If I'm wrong, I'm putting my stop loss below $1,300. But if I'm right, I'm going to make some incredible profits. So you could have jumped in around here, all right? Because you have the structures right here, guys. This is telling you most likely the bottom is in. And even if you still don't believe right here, all you could have done at the time was do something like this. You put a resistance right here. All right, remember, we don't have this, but we have this at the time. You put a resistance around $1,700. Once price goes above $1,700, if you still believe the bottom is not in, you got to do more. You got to do more work on your technical analysis. Anyways, so looking at the current state of Ethereum, I don't have any of that. All right, when I go to the 1 hour, I do not have, all right, any of that. What I need to see is I need to see a pullback, okay? If the bottom is truly in, I need to see a pullback. Whether we get the pullback right now or we get it sometimes later, I need to see a pullback, and I need to see what the pullback is going to accomplish. Is it a double bottom? Is it a higher low? Is it a lower low? I don't know what we get, all right? And then I need to see a move back to the upside. Now, this move right here, if we can break above, let's just say this is the top of the move. If we can break above $2,100, that's exactly what I want to see. After that, I need to see another pullback. And this pullback right here is got to stay above this low right here. Or if we go below this low, then I need to see some bullish divergence on either the RSI or the MACD. But I prefer something where instead of going below the low, we just stay above it. And then if we get a bounce, I am willing to be a buyer somewhere around here, and I'm willing to pull my stop loss somewhere below this low right here, guys. This is exactly my approach on Ethereum. So I am perfectly fine to stay on the sideline, be a buyer somewhere down here or even somewhere up here. And then I'm going to simply pull my stop loss just right below this low right here. And I am okay if I do take an L. Now, I don't want to take a 20% loss. So I prefer something that looks like this, where my loss is no more than 10%. So this is exactly what I'm looking for. Until I see something like this, I'm extremely bearish on Ethereum. And my prediction will continue to be that you are more likely are going to see Ethereum down into this $1,300-$1,500 range. Maybe not right now, but just give it a couple months. Let's talk about Solana. All right, Solana is currently around $85. I mean, guys, these things are disasters, man. When you zoom out, when you go to the monthly, I don't think I don't think this is the end of the bear market. I think we're going way, way lower. So I'm looking at Solana right now. There is no way. There's absolutely no way this is the end of Solana's big drop, Solana's big bear market. Absolutely not, guys. This is not it. But anyways, looking at Solana on the weekly, the big thing is that if we close below, $95, if we close the week below $95, that is a big, big bearish confirmation. I don't care. Prices. Oh, wow. Did we actually go to 67? That is crazy. I don't care. The price of Solana has gone from $67 up to 85. This does not change anything. Like, there's nothing in here. There's no accomplishment in this move right here. So we'll see where we close on the weekly. But guess what, guys? We already had a daily close below $95. So to me, the daily kind of basically told us what the weekly is going to do. The daily kind of gave us a heads up. The guys, look, the weekly is also going to close below $95. And that, my friends, it is bad, bad, bad. So how can I change my opinion on, this long-term downtrend? Guys, look, exactly what I just showed you guys when it came to Ethereum. That is exactly what I would like to see. And when we are talking about long-term outlooks, I don't want to see the 1 hour turnaround. I want to see the daily turnaround. So let me give you an example of that. If you go back to the last bear market, this is the daily turning around right here, guys. We got this right here. This was the low, sometimes around June of 2022. Yo, chat, trust me. When Solana dropped from $260 to 26, you would have thought this was the low of the bear market. But guess what? Look, price went up, and then we had a pullback. We ended up breaking $26. This is exactly what I'm talking about. If you think the bottom is in, then we must not go below $60,000 or any, when it comes to these altcoins, any of the most recent lows. So we ended up coming down. Not only did we take out 26, all right, we ended up dropping all the way down to where? All the way down to, $8. But this is where things start looking interesting. Then you get a rally right here, guys. You get some pullbacks. You get some higher lows right here. You get another rally that breaks above the previous high right here. All right, you get a pullback. You get another higher low. Notice how when we got here, now you have price starting to break above major moving averages. This is the 200 daily moving average. Here we're starting to break above it. Right back here, we're nowhere near the 200 daily moving average. But right here, finally, for the first time, we start breaking above the 200 daily moving average. Not only that, when you go to the weekly, all right, when you go to the weekly and you look at the development of this setup right here, guys, you can clearly see as price was breaking structures, the RSI was putting in some bullish divergences. The weekly MACD also was putting in some bullish divergency. So there was a reason to be bullish long term. Right now, we don't have any of that. Right now you have, momentum wise, you have an extremely bearish momentum on the MACD. You have an RSI on the weekly that is approaching an extremely oversold territory. Oversold doesn't mean you jump into the market, because price can go lower even though, things are oversold in the short term. So, when I look at these indicators, I don't want to be a buyer. And then when I go to the monthly, I don't see a reason from a momentum perspective. I don't see a reason to do anything with Solana. All right. I promise you guys, you see the momentum indicator. These colors, they gotta have to change. They gotta have to go from red into pink. We gotta have to see something like this. And then when you see a shift in the momentum, where these bars right here are getting smaller or they are shrinking, when they're giving you these higher lows, that is when you should start looking for a reason to be a buyer. Right now, you are trying to find a reason to stay out of the market. And this is your reason right here. Trust me, you don't want to do anything right now, guys. And what you have right now is nothing but a day cap bounce. Yo, we had day cap bounces in the last bear market. You look at the state of Solana on the monthly, it's been a straight line from $250 down to $60. All right, it's not going to be a straight line. There's going to be some bounces. So we might get 2-3 months where price may go up, just like right here, guys. All right, we were somewhere around 76, ended up rallying back to around $144. Yo, chat, trust me. In the last bear market, if you would have saw the price of Solana go from 76 back to 144, you would have thought the bear market was over. Only to end up with another, this is probably an 80% crash, only to end up with this 94% crash, all right, after this big rally right here, guys. So I'm telling you right now, even if we do get a rally, let's say we go all the way back to, do I think we go back to like 140? I don't think so. But I could see a rally back to like, $110, potentially $120. So I'm just kind of looking at, these levels right here. I think this is an area of interest on the monthly. Also on the weekly. All right. I don't know if we go back there, but I'm just kind of, I'm just trying to show you that, these levels right here that we could potentially retest, maybe even around $100. So if you do get something like that, I promise you, it doesn't mean that the bear market is over. We're going to get another drop into this, $40, $30 range, sometimes in 2026. And the worst thing that can actually happen to Solana is this upcoming day cap bounce, because this is what generates enough momentum to send the price all the way down here. All right. The example that I've always used is this. If you are bearish on Solana and you are trying to short Solana, guys, do you think this is a good time to be a buyer? Do you think this is a time to grab a position? Or would you like to see some sort of a recovery? Would you like to see a bounce first and then jump into a position? All right, I think you would like to see a bounce. You don't want to jump into something that just, they're just gone from $150 to $60, right? The time to jump in would have been around here, not here. Right here, you want to wait for something like this to take place. You want to wait for a day cap bounce. If price can go back to around $100 and it looks like another breakdown is about to take place, that is when you jump into a position and then you ride it all the way down into the 40s and potentially 30s. So, yeah, altcoins, I'm really not a fan of the setup. Days like this, you think this could be the beginning of something. This could be the start of, going back to retesting those highs, only for a couple months later to be disappointed, because not only do you lose, the entire gains from the day cap bounce, but you actually ended up going lower. That's an amazing question, but I mean, look, I can't give you an advice on what to do with your position, because depending on what that looks like. Personally, I think Jasmy goes lower. I think QNT goes lower. I think the 20% today is an opportunity to get out of the position if you are not bad as much, I guess. I think this is an opportunity to exit. Yo, the thinking right now, like those that are holding a bunch of these stuff, trust me, the thinking right now is not we're going back to new all-time highs. The thinking right now is please get back to my average. Let me break even so I can get out of the market. That is always the thinking. The thinking. The thinking is not like if you have MicroStrategy. Think about this, guys. If you have MicroStrategy right now, and this is me right now, my entry is $172, and I don't have a big position. I have like a tiny position because I was trying to counter. I was hoping there was going to be a day cap bounce. Basically, what's happening right now is what I was hoping was going to take place from around $170. I thought we were going to see a bounce from 170 to like the low $200 range, and I was gonna get out of my position around there. So the thinking right now, at least my thinking is, if we can go back to $170, I want to get out of my position. I do want to buy MicroStrategy in the next bull market, but I know that my entry could be, way, way lower. Like, I don't want to have an entry where my average price is 170. Yo, this is a stock that is potentially going to around $80. I've made this prediction way, way before, guys. All right. Like, this was one of my outlook on Sailor Coin around $230. Where I was talking about, you lose 230. We're going straight down to 115. It's crazy because the person that was talking about once you lose 230, we're going down to 115 is the same person that got into a position at $172. It's wild out here, man. It's crazy. So, anyways, yeah, look, I can't tell you what to do with your position, but if I'm looking at Jasmy, this is a big. Oh man, I wouldn't even do anything. Jasmy, yeah. Look, could he go higher? Probably. The thing is that I don't want to say get out because he might go higher. Like Jasmy could potentially even go up to like, if I'm looking at this weekly, like he could even go back to around like 0.008. I'm not saying that he's going to, but he could go back to any of these levels. So if you get out right here and price goes up here, you wish you would have held on to your position. But the truth is, is going much, much lower. And I think Jasmy is going to lose these lows right here. All right, I think Jasmy is comfortably, guys. Like, I am comfortable with my analysis in this market. I think Jasmy is going to lose this level. And I think Jasmy is coming all the way, all the way here. I really believe we're coming all the way here. Now, once again, look, this is a game of probabilities. So I really don't, it may sound like, but I'm not speaking in certainty. But the probabilities of losing this support right here and coming down into this range, I think is way, way higher. Because, if I think Bitcoin is going below $60,000, then, what makes you think Jasmy is going to hold on to these levels right here? Like, I don't think so at all. If I go to the lower time, like if I'm on the 1 hour, this is a really nice move. But once again, I think this is a perfect place to take some profits for, anyone who jumped in around here. A major resistance right now is, this right here is, 638, 641. Like, this is a major resistance. If Jasmy can break above this, if Jasmy can give us something that looks like this, all right, so like somewhere down here, will make sense to speculate on, potentially going higher. But the pullback and then price goes up, like this alone, it doesn't really accomplish anything. Because look, I can make an argument. There is not a difference between the current price action to, the one we had just recently, right? This was a 20% move. This one right here is a 30% move. So yeah, it's really not much of a difference. And even this one right here, like there's nothing Jasmy is doing today that you haven't seen already. This is a 10% move. This was the biggest one. This one right here was an 85% move. So just think about this, right? Recently, Jasmy went up about 85%, but not only did we get rid of the entire 85% pump, we actually ended up going lower. So today's price action doesn't really change anything. Like, it doesn't change anything at all. Oh my gosh, you got some constructions. There's construction around me, guys. If there's a lot of noise in the background, I do apologize. Yeah, I gotta grab something to drink though because I am thirsty. Oh my gosh, man. Once again, yeah, appreciate you guys for tuning in. Smash the like button, subscribe, and whatever else that you guys can do to help the channel continue to grow. Hit the like. Speaking of Michael Strategy and Michael Saylor, recently we had a conversation that someone is going to get liquidated, and someone's going to get liquidated, and people think it could potentially be Saylor. So Michael Strategy recently did an interview with what is this? Is this Fox News or Bloomberg? It looks like Fox, right? So it looks like it's nothing to worry about as long as Bitcoin goes up about 1.25%. Yeah, Bitcoin is definitely doing that in its sleep. Strategy can pay its dividend forever. Wow, yeah, they got cash on the sideline. I guess they don't have to worry about liquidation. So yeah, we're gonna take his words. So that's good for every MSTR holder. There's nothing to worry about. BTC probably won. Experience, FTX type of event. Yep, yep, yep. That is crazy. Wow. Yeah, all right, all right. There's a reason he has 100% hit rate for the last 10 years. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Anyways, what else do we have here, guys? I feel like we've no noise. All right, nice. Difference between getting in before the higher time frame structure, $30 versus 20. Solana is up 700% versus 100. Yeah, yep, 100%. Yeah, look, if you get in lower and you get lucky and you happen to capture the absolute lows of the bear market, like congratulations, right? But you gotta have a different outlook, because when you think about Solana, and that's a very good, I'm glad you actually brought that up, because whenever we say that wait for the higher time structure to form, the argument is always, well, you're gonna buy higher. Well, guys, trust me, you don't want to be first to the party. So because think about this, chat, right? It's a lot easier to say, I would have bought at $8 instead of $20. I'm gonna tell you the entry right here was actually 21. I'm gonna explain it to you why, okay? Yo, I was here when Solana dropped to $8. I was literally here. At the time, when you were looking at the chart, we thought the price of Solana was going down to $3 based on TA, guys, because $8, there was no support around $8. All right. And the moment you lost, like once you lose this, this is not even a support unless you go down to the lower time. Once you lose $12, all right, in terms of like support and resistance, the next support for Solana was going to come in around $3. And I don't know how many of you guys were here, around $5, excuse me, 5, not 3. And then once you lose 5, you start looking at $3, somewhere around here. All right. 270 actually. So I was here when the price of Solana was at 8. All right. Guys, I was literally here when the price was at $8. Now, hey, look, guys, when you look back, it's a lot easier to say, if I was there when Solana was at $8, I would have bought so. Yeah, it's a lot easier to say that, guys. I would have bought so much of it. But remember, there was a time the price was around $26. All right. And we are talking about an asset that literally just dropped from 266. So the same way you say I would have bought at $8 is the same way if someone asks you, well, how do we know you wouldn't have bought around 80? Because when the price of Solana was around $80, having gone from 266, when you go from the top all the way down to the bottom, this is a 70% crash, guys. Once you see a 70% crash, it's like today, you're thinking about, oh, this is an opportunity right here. So the same way you say you would have bought $8 is exactly the same way you would have bought 80. So actually, instead of 8, you would have bought 80, and you don't have money left to jump in at 8. Or let's just say you are very clever, and around $80, you knew the price of Solana was going lower. After we lost $80, and then you saw price come all the way down into the 50s. What about 50s? You would have bought 50? All right. And what about 26? You would have bought 26? All right. So it's a lot easier to look $8 and say, yeah, I definitely would have bought 8. But if you wait for the structure to take place, all right, there is no mistakes because you are waiting for certain things. You have a strategy in place. One of my strategies always, I want to be a buyer. Once the price has broken above their 200 daily moving average. On the weekly, I prefer if the stock is above the 21 weekly. I gave a buy signal of Solana at $21. Instead of 8, instead of 16, instead of 19, I give a buy signal at $21. And let me show you why 21. Well, what I was waiting for was the price of Solana to break above my 21 weekly moving average. And I was also waiting for a retest of the 21, and I was waiting for the 21 to hold. So at the time, I just don't have a proof right now because, my other channel was got deleted. At the time, at 21, I gave a buy signal, but I never bought Solana because at the time I was very afraid of what was going on. The fundamentals came into play, and I refused to buy Solana. But if I would have bought it, my entry would have been 21. All right. So if your entry is 21 based on higher time structure bullish setup, look, Solana goes on to 294. This is more than a 10x, but your exit is not there. Let's just say you exit somewhere around 250, or let's say 260. Let's say your target was the previous all-time high. This is a 9x, man. The person who doesn't have a strategy and the only dollar cost average, trust me, they bought somewhere around $50. That was their entry, or somewhere around 40. All right, or somewhere around 70. All right, you got to have a strategy. You got to be patient and allow these things to play out. Allow these higher time frames to turn bullish before you do anything. Forget about capturing the bottom and the actual top of the bull market. No one, absolutely no one, guys. No one knows where the top is. No one knows where the bottom is. Look, I'm predicting $40, $50. Solana could potentially go back in the 20s. We could potentially go back in the teens. You have to be careful. All right, chat. I'm going to do another live stream later today. I think I'm going to focus on short-term price outlook. I really appreciate you guys. Let me take my time to look at this market, away from this, and then we'll do this again later. All right, guys. Peace out.